Alright, welcome back. So in this video we're going to create the auth state, so authentication related stuff, which will also make us need to take into account effects. And if you are familiar with React and Redux, the effects module is pretty similar to uh, Redux Dunk or Redux Saga, in which it does the side effects for asynchronous actions. Um, NgRx is different in that it uses RxJS observables to do all of that for you. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's get started. Let's create our files. So the first file we need is inside of source app store actions, and this is the auth action. I think I'm going with singular, so action.ts. And we also need source, app, store, reducers, auth.reducer.ts. And open up both of those files, and first we're going to do our actions. And I do not have the thing pulled up correctly, so give me 1 second. It is over here. Okay, so in our auth actions, we're gonna need to import from NgRx store the action interface, and we also want to import our data models from inside of our app models slash this one's user, so this is the user object, and we also want the auth DTO from app models auth. Alright, now we just need to define our action types. So export enum auth action types. This is going to be login user auth login user. We also want register user. I'm gonna make everything capitalized, and we want to set the current user auth set current user, and then lastly we want to create one for set initial user, which is what we're going to use for when the application starts up. Okay, now we just need to create a action object or class for each of these types. So export class login user implements action. It has a read-only type of auth action types dot login user, and the constructor here is going to take a payload of the type auth DTO data transfer object, and let's see, register user is going to look exactly the same. Read only type action auth action types dot register user constructor payload of auth DTO. Now set current user and set initial user is gonna look a little different. Actually, set initial user is gonna be the same actually. So I take back what I just said. Initial user read only type auth action types dot set initial user constructor payload of auth, data transfer objects. Okay, now finally, set current user is going to look a little different. Read-only type, auth action types dot set current user, constructor payload, and this payload is going to be an actual user. Now I'll go over that in a little second, but let's quickly make sure that our user interface has a token field, which it does. So this should work perfectly for us. And then finally, we need to export the type action, which is the union of all of the actions that we just created. So login user, register user, set initial user, and set current user. Okay. Now the reason why set current user is different is because this is the only action that we care about in our reducer. These three up here are going to be handled with the effects module, and they're going to actually do the asynchronous events. So in our reducer, this should be pretty simple because we're only doing one switch. So one second, where is the thing? There it is. All right, cool. So here we're gonna interface the auth state. It is gonna be user, and it's gonna be a user or no. And we're gonna have a initial state of type auth state. And the user is going to be null. And finally, our reducer. So export const auth reducer states equals to, that's going to be states auth states action from type this one. So from errors or auth, I mean, store, right? No, app/store. There we go. All right, cool. And state is gonna have the default parameter of initial state, and action is gonna be of type action. There we go. And there's gonna be a switch statement based on action.type. Case of auth action types dot set current user return states user with action.payload. Defaults is gonna just return the state. And why is this off? Property payload does not exist on type set current user. What? Alright, sorry about that. I just realized that we can't access payload here because in our actions we forgot to add public to all of our constructors. So the payload was not, it was a private variable that we couldn't access. And now we can. So there we go. Now, all we need to do is take into account the other actions. So login user, register user, and set initial user should access our service, make the API request, and then come back with an actual user that we can use to set the current user. So let's create a FX directory. So make directory source app store FX, and also store FX the auth.effect.ts file, which we're gonna create here. Alright, so where is my FX? So in the auth effect, it's gonna be an injectable from Angular, and we're gonna create a class called auth effects. This should actually be a. I'm gonna rename this. So it's plural effects, and let's see. The effects class takes in two things into the constructor: private action, and it's gonna be an observable. So we're gonna set the suffix to a $, and this is going to be actions coming from NgRx effects. This one, all right. And the second one, we're going to inject in our auth service. All right. I think that's everything that we need. All right. Inside here, we're gonna create the set initial user $, which is an observable of type action, and this action is coming from this one, and we have to decorate this with a effect, and all we have to do is just do a this.actions, and we're gonna pipe in some observable what are these things called? Operators. So RxJS operators. And this is, let's see. So the first thing we need to do is check the type. And it's going to be of type set initial user. And inside of type, we're going to check that it is set initial, no, this is going to be auth action types dot set initial user. Then after that, we're going to use a merge map. And merge map comes from RxJS operators, which we need to import here. RxJS operators. There we go. Okay, so inside the merge map, it's going to take an action, which is going to be set initial user. And we're going to do a callback to this dot auth service dot who am I, and then of course this returns an observable, so we're going to pipe in more stuff. So we're going to do a map really quick of the user, and then we're going to send in set current user of that user. And then for catch errors, we're just going to send of error for now. These are RxJS operators, so we need to import these. So map and catch error from here. And it's screaming at us because of incorrect types. So there. There we go. All right. So that's set initial user. And we're going to do the same thing for login and register. So add effect. And this one's going to be login user. Observable action this dot action dot pipe of type login user auth action types dot login user merge map action of login user this dot auth service dot auth. The auth type here is going to be login, and the data is action dot payload, I believe. Is that correct? Yeah, that's right. Then we're going to pipe more observables. And let's see. Here I'm going to do map of user type user new set current user of that user. And I'm getting lost in the curly or the brackets, so I think this one? No, it's this one. Catch error. Error of error. There we go. And why is this auth is private? It can only be, oh, okay. There we go. And then register is going to look almost identical, so we can do a copy and paste. We just gotta change this to register user. Oops. Register user. And then this register user. Alright, cool. So with all of that, we've created the auth effect. And all we have to do now is in our app store, make an effects export const effects, which is an array of effects. And in here is going to be auth effects. We're also going to add in the auth state here, which needs the auth reducer. And then with this effects, we're going to just put it inside of effects here. And there we go. So now we have the auth actions in place with the effects so that it knows what to do when we do a set initial user, as well as login user and register user. And yeah.